Everybody, Rick Dawson here, and I got Joe on the line tonight. You there, Joe?
Hi, everybody. Sure, I'm here.
All right, good. It looks like we've got the technical issues settled, so we can have Joe join us from now on here. So very good. Today we're going to talk about obtaining the list, and I do agree with Joe on one thing. That's one of my favorite parts of the business. There's nothing like requesting a list and having it come back to you in electronic format, seeing all those 5- and 6-figure amounts on there. It's a great part of the business. So we're really excited to do this this segment tonight. Every time before each webinar, I'm just going to go through on how to participate in the webinar very briefly, because I know it's probably a little hard to remember from day to day. So once again, during the presentation, on your right, you'll have a questions area where you can type questions. And as usual, I can see Monty's already got a welcome greeting in there. So welcome to you, Monty. And anyone else that has a question, try to keep it on the topic of where I am in the presentation. If you have something a little more, a little more out there that's not directly on point, let's cover that at the end. I'll unmute you, and you can ask your question. So the way to do that is look for this little icon right here on your right as well. It'll have a little raise hand button, and if you just click on that, I'll know you want to ask a voice question, and I'll unmute you at the end. And you can raise your hand anytime you like. Just make sure you remember what your question is if you do it early, all right?
Sounds good.
So, obtaining lists, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And, in the video we talked about what is a list, and it just seems like kind of an obvious question, but the list might not be exactly what you're expecting. It might not be a neat list of one claim after another on a nice little spreadsheet for you. They might have a separate record for each claim that you're going to get. They might have to generate that list using a database or something. They don't have stacks of these lists stapled and sitting in a pile somewhere ready to hand out. So, you know you're going to be getting a list, but it might not be in the form that you expect, right?
Yeah, another good point to make is that some of the public records laws, they say that we're not required to create new documents. If you request a document, we'll give it to you, but we're not going to generate a list for you if we don't have it. So sometimes, as nice as it would be to get that spreadsheet, sometimes I get a handwritten list that somebody's put together. It's got 3 or 4 claims on it, and that's it. Here you go, have fun. So you just really never know what you're going to get from these people.
And they could very well not have a list, so to speak, right? I mean, they could just have claims on separate sheets or handwritten or anything else, right? You just need to get the information. Mm-hmm. So you might have to compile your own list from what they give you. They might give them to you one at a time. I'll show you an example of that. In Indiana, this is what a unclaimed tax sale overage looks like. You can see they've received $19,236, and it has not been paid out. Payment of redemption right here, you can see that's blank. So they haven't paid that out yet. This is an old record, and we're not entirely sure we could collect on it anymore. But it just goes to show you that if I asked the state of Indiana for a list, they'd say we don't keep a list. And whether they do or not, this is what we'd have to get one at a time. So we'd get one of these here, and the next one would look like this. Here's a $5,200 surplus uncollected. Other times, they do keep things in a list. And here's one I've shown a lot of times. This is my local clerk of courts list. And this looks a lot more like a list, doesn't it? You'll see who's entitled to the money, or at least who the plaintiff in the case was. You'll see how much. You'll see the date. And you'll see the case number. So you can go from there and request the case numbers that you're interested in and find out who might be getting that money. So don't have any preconceived notions of exactly what a list is. If they have a list, great. If they don't, they have it recorded somehow.
You would think. And also, if they come back to you and say we don't have a list, well, you need to ask, well, then what do you have? Because certainly you track these in some manner. And they may tell you we don't have a list just to kind of make you go away, maybe. So it's always important to find out exactly what their system is and how they work it.
Exactly. So where do we obtain the list that we're going after? County treasurers almost always have some unclaimed funds, and that's a common place where tax sale overages and mortgage overages go. In my particular state, the county treasurer may have plenty of unclaimed funds, but the mortgage foreclosure and the tax sale overages are not there. They're at the auditor and they're at the clerk of court. So we've tried to point you in the right direction in the 50-state guide that I hope you all have, and that'll keep you from wasting time. But the treasurer almost always has some good stuff.
Mm-hmm. And it is kind of like a treasure hunt, don't you think? Because it's rare that you're going to send one email and it's going to come back with a list. You have to kind of work your way and navigate through their little maze until you find out, what person, what department, and what exactly to request in order to get these things on a regular basis. That's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing because it just means everybody else has to do that too, and most people won't do that. Most will give up before then. But if you're just determined to see this thing through the end, no matter how many emails it takes, eventually you sort of cross things off and you move a little bit further and a little bit further, and you find just who's involved and what to ask for and how to get it. It is, people talk about cracking the code. It's overused for sure, but there definitely is some of that here where, figuring it all out and coming up with just that exact result you need in order to do this easily the next time. That's kind of what we're after here, don't you think? I
do. And who knows who you're going to talk to on the phone or email the very first time, and that can lead you on a chase where you have to follow through. So.
And they could get it completely wrong what they tell you, the first person you talk to. They if you've asked, if you're looking in a specific county and you ask the wrong person, they may tell you exactly what they know and send you in the exact wrong direction because it was the wrong person and they don't know what you're asking for. They've misunderstood what you've requested. So it's important to keep plugging away until you do get the results you're looking for.
Yeah, and that's more likely than not to actually happen when you make your first contact. Not everybody in that office knows every detail of how that office is handled, and in a lot of cases, tracking the surplus funds is 1% of what they do. They're very busy filing court cases or whatever they do. This is a very small part of what they do. And so there's probably only one person or two people out of maybe a dozen or maybe more that really know. So just don't take what they give you at face value.
What happens if you request a list of unclaimed funds and in their office they call them surplus funds and they don't know what unclaimed funds is, or they call them overbids, or there's, what did we figure out? There were 6 or 8 different terms that different agencies use for these things. So just knowing the right term to ask for that particular agency may mean the difference of getting it or not. So that's nothing you'll be able to know for sure until you've gone through it a bit. I
just learned a new one for Iowa, Overplus.
Overplus.
Heard of that one?
We have to add that to the list. I have seen it, Overplus. Yeah. I liked Remainders. I saw that in Nevada, Remainders.
Yeah, it can be anything. Yeah, it can definitely be anything. But you obviously want to start with the agency that has the sale and start with them. See what they do with the funds that are generated at the sale. See if they keep them for a while. See if they pass them on to another party, like a treasurer or a court clerk or something like that. That's really where you want to start. And you'll just have to follow the trail. Sometimes they keep them right there, and sometimes they go to one or more different spots. So how do we really actually get started here? My favorite thing is to get something in front of me that shows me all the counties in the state that I'm looking at. By now I've already gone through step 2 that we covered on Monday, and I've got a good idea that the state I'm interested in is a good candidate. I know I'm not locked out by any kind of really restrictive laws. I've got my little time frame where I know I can charge about whatever I want to collect within reason, maybe up to 40, even up to 50%. There's a lot of work for it. So, let's find all the counties that are in that state, and let's get a population for them too, and I'll show you that in just a second. Joe and I like to start with smaller counties that are kind of out there. Not really a huge county like Cook County, Illinois, that has 5 million people. We want a county that might have 30,000, 50,000 people because they certainly have overages, but they're just a lot friendlier usually. Haven't you found that, Joe?
Yeah, for sure. That's the way it works.
You know, they're not bugged by people all the time coming in and yelling at them. And when I visit these smaller rural counties, it just seems like there's a friendly atmosphere over there, and they're more than happy to help you. And if you get real lucky, someone will even give you a nice education on how the whole thing works. And you can carry that over to the bigger counties because usually every agency in a state has to basically operate the same way. If you mess up, you're not going to blow a huge opportunity either. You can move on. You can keep working these mid to low-sized counties until you've really got a handle on it. You even got a few lists in your hands, and now you know exactly what you're looking for. You've had success. You know that you can translate that to other counties in the state.
Perfect.
So let me show you a really neat site I found here. This site, and I've got it posted on the webinar. It's a little bit of a funky URL up there, but you can see the whole United States, and you can click on any state and get a nice printable picture of what all the counties are in the state. So I like to print this thing out when I'm getting started in the state and maybe just make some notes on the ones I might try to go after first and what happened. There's enough room to jot a couple brief notes in there and just put sent email or write the population in there or whatever you're trying to do. Finding the population of counties is just a simple Google search away. I was getting ready earlier, and the first thing I typed in was population of Texas counties. And right there up front, you can do all sorts of different searches. We don't care about what their population was in the 70s, but usually a 2000 U.S. Census figure would put us in the ballpark of whether a county is really small or not. And you can see there's some we don't even want to touch. There's one that has 729 people. Here's one that has 2.2 million people. So they really go the whole range. I couldn't believe this. I was telling Joe earlier, this county has 67 people. I don't know how that works.
So are we gonna target that one, you think?
We're probably not going to target that one at all. We want to have something there at least, right? Although if we found something, we could probably easily find the claimant because everyone must know each other there.
In my state, we have 39 counties. I have an email address. I click one button, and my email goes to all of them. So I would certainly have that county on the list. I wouldn't expect much, but, who knows? One property, who knows?
Maybe someone really wants to show you how things work, too. You never know.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So, I don't know. I usually start with a county that has at least, 20, 30, 40,000 people. As you can see in Texas, they must have 100 of them, so it's not like you don't have enough to choose from. And you just go from there. I'm sure you could do a search like this for just about any state and come up with some nice county data like that. Mm-hmm. All right. So how's your first contact going to go? It's good if you have some idea of what you're asking for and not just sending an email that says, hi, do you have any unclaimed funds? Please send a list. But if you're having any difficulty, just call and pretty much say just that. I've been reading through the state statute here, and I see that your office holds foreclosure sales or tax sales, and I understand that there are overages created sometimes when these sales occur, and they may be due the owner. And I'd like to speak with who handles those auctions. You want to speak with them directly. Like we said earlier, there's going to be a lot of back and forth and confusion and misinformation if you just talk to the $7 an hour person that answers the phone. So now that you're talking to the person that holds the sale, they should certainly be aware that unclaimed funds are generated from overages on tax sales or mortgage foreclosures, and they should be used to putting those wherever they go in the appropriate account and keeping track of them. I mean, obviously, if we make a claim somewhere, they're going to double check and make sure that money's still there. So where do they go to do that? That should give us the answers that we're really looking for. see if they'll give you the name of the account where they hold these funds. As you'll see in a little bit, I made a public records request last week, and I was told from everybody in the office that they didn't know what I was talking about. And after I told them I had gotten a successful public records request from there in the past, they quit telling me that, but they told me, oh, you know, I think who handles that is at lunch right now, so you could wait about an hour. And I said, no, it's okay. I'll go home and make a written request, and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and as you'll see, that's what happens. So talking to the right person is critical, and it's not too hard to be able to accomplish that and figure out who that is. These agencies have some requirements anytime you're making a public records request. Sometimes they'll insist on a written request, or they'll insist that you use their form for a written request, charge reasonable fees in most cases, those kind of things. So if you acknowledge that you're aware of how that works, it'll make you look a little bit more professional. And one thing to keep in mind when you're getting all lists is always try to get an electronic format. So much quicker and easier to get it by email, and if you can even get it in a spreadsheet, that saves you almost all of your data entry. Or a lot of them like to give it out in PDF these days, and at least that can be emailed and save us some time. But if your only choice is to get something in the mail, whether it be some kind of printout of a spreadsheet or a printout of a PDF or even something handwritten, that's what we need, and we can easily get a data entry person to help us get that done if that's slowing us down. Let me see if we have any questions.
Another good reason for that electronic version is we do all of our work, all of our skip tracing and just our research. We do that all online. We create a case, and we'll show you how to do that soon. But all that electronic data, if it's a spreadsheet or not a spreadsheet, but if it's a PDF, say, I want to have that PDF show up with that individual claim, because there may be information on there that we can use. And if that isn't up there, it's not so much that that I'm missing information. It's that I don't know whether or not I'm missing information. So if I can see the claim form and I can see exactly what we have, then I'm confident I know the whole picture, at least in terms of what we've discovered so far. So again, just in terms of claim processing, great to have a PDF of what they've given you so you can confirm you've got everything you've got so far. Does that make sense? That's kind of convoluted, but
well, yeah. Sure. In fact, any kind of paper list that I get, I immediately scan in to PDF, and I park them somewhere. So if I need to go back and get specifics, like I showed this example here of the Indiana claim form. I'm not going to get too far without this name and address and a lot of other details from this. A lot of times I have to put the property ID into my claim.
Sure.
So I need to have these readily available for myself. So I scan them in if I have to.
Every case I'm researching, I want that form in front of me. I want the form for that case just like that. If there is one, I want it in front of me, because who knows, there may be little things that come up that you can do a lot of, have a lot of success with just a little piece of information here that you wouldn't normally think mattered.
Definitely. And we're going to be covering that pretty soon, how to use HighRise HQ to keep track of your claims. And one of the nice things about it is, as you create each claim, you can upload a sheet such as the one I just showed you, and it can be right there forever, ready for you to just tap into when the time comes.
Yep.
All right, got a couple questions here. Does the staff usually know what you want the list for? Well, the initial person answering the phone probably doesn't even know too much about the list in the first place, so they don't know. But when you talk to the right person, yeah, many times they do know what you want the list for, and they'll certainly ask you, not so much because they're nosy, but because they want to make sure they're giving you the right thing. A lot of people make public records requests, and they request the wrong thing for the purpose they're using it for, and then the employee has to do it all over again. So they often do ask me what I'm doing, and I just tell them what I'm doing. Doesn't really change the fact that I'm entitled to it or that they're compelled to give it to me. What's your idea of a reasonable fee? It's pretty rare when they try to hit you with something really ridiculous. Usually, Joe, what is it, 25 cents to $1 per page to copy, and sometimes they charge their actual expenses for putting the list together. So if it's $25, $50, and it has few $100,000 in claims on it, it sounds like a bargain to me.
Well, in my state, it's 15 cents per page. So, often it's, $1.27. Well, that's not really divisible by 15, is it? But it's never a lot of money for their claims list, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they charge me $1 for in the clerk of court here per page, but that has up to 20 or 30 claims on it. So it's just really not significant. Some counties hire a law firm to do the auctions. What has your experience with law firms? I really think only Texas does that I'm aware of, or maybe a couple others. And I don't think law firms are subject to public records requests, but you would think they would have to pass that information back to the county for them to know what's going on. So that's not a very common issue. For those working the business from New Zealand, Australia, what's the best way of accessing hard copy lists? I think my sister Maggie is going to announce a service very soon where, and Chris from New Zealand asked how can we pay the fees. Maggie wants to help everybody out, and for I think a reasonable monthly fee, she's going to receive your hard copy lists. You can PayPal her any money you'd like to send out to the counties, and she'll do that for you. And if you're having problems sending letters from there, that may even be something. So keep your eye open for that. We're just trying to see what makes sense and what will help everybody out.
That's a great idea. I'm glad we can do that.
Yeah, and she even figured some people from the U.S. might even want to use that, and they're welcome to. Okay, so other than calling, how else can we contact these records? Well, as Joe said earlier, in a lot of states we like to email the request because the agencies are still required to respond to an email just as if it was a letter that came in. And plus, any agencies that are cooperative right off the bat with an email request, it's just so much easier than printing a letter out and sending it out. You can just send them an email with what you're looking for. A lot of states, though, require a formal written request if the county wants to not be as cooperative as possible. And in order to get the public records laws on your side, which we're going to get to in a little bit, sometimes that doesn't happen until a formal written request is made. And otherwise, the agency can pretty much ignore your request if they choose to. So be prepared to have to make a formal written request. And when you have a template set up, you can do it in just a few minutes and just stick it in the mail. It's really not a problem. And sometimes when you know exactly what you're asking for, it's easier than going through the phone tree. It's easier just to send it in, address it to the public records officer, and set it and forget it for 7 or 10 days, and you'll be getting a call, or you can follow up then. And so once you know what you're asking for, especially after you get a couple lists and you can see what they're called, and you've asked a couple friendly clerks what that list is called, then you go nuts. You email everybody in the state, or you just do a mail merge with your Word document and just get them all out. You might make 100 requests at once if you're so inclined. So we talked a little bit about the law just now.
Back to that. When you do a blast like that, it's important you're organized. So create a little spreadsheet so you can check off what's come in and what hasn't, because you'll quickly just be overwhelmed and not know who's responded and who hasn't. So it's always good to have some sort of spreadsheet where you can put a date when you sent it, a date when you received it, and then just some notation if there's more you need to do in terms of following up. We do it online so we can share it, and it's one of the Google Docs is a spreadsheet, so it's really easy to create, and other people can, if you have a virtual assistant, say, they can manage that for you.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah. And you could even use contact management software if you're doing that many. So thank you for mentioning that. Wanted to clear up a misconception, although if you saw the video today, Joe mentioned it. You're usually not going to call your request a Freedom of Information Act. That's that's the most common, it's the most common term out there for making these kind of requests, but that usually refers to a federal information request. So it's not going to compel the states to do much of anything.
Well, it's going to prove that you don't know what you're doing is what it's going to do. So let's not use that.
There you go. And there are a couple states that do call it the Freedom of Information Act, but only about 2 or 3, and that's just what they chose to name it. The rest of the time, they'll know that you're just poking around, and they may give you a little trouble. So we have each state's Public Record Act referenced in the 50-state guide, and that's the same thing we were referring to in the last webinar that we did. And I've got a couple of them just queued up right here to take a look at. We can't put the whole thing in once again, because it could probably be 20 or 30 pages each, and it would make the document just unusable almost. But very, very good clues to what you're looking for. I mean, here, I think this is the North Dakota one right here, and we show you that a request need not be made in person or writing, and the copy must be mailed upon request. I mean, that's as good as it gets, don't you think, Joe? I mean, if you call, they're bound, and they have to mail it to you. That doesn't get any better than that. But as I said, we don't put the whole thing in here because it would be way too much. So if you want to get the details, just do what we did for the tax sale and the mortgage overages step that we did on Monday, and that is take this code section here and just Google it, and you'll get right to the entire thing so that you can see it. Another good thing, there are a lot of informal guides out there that are just written in plain English, and they cut out all the legalese that you might be dreading when you read these. And let me show you one I called up here. I typed in California Public Records Act, and here's a little California Public Records Act pocket guide. And so, who knows, maybe the California Public Records Act code is 20 pages long. But look at this. Who's covered? What's not covered? What's covered? What must happen? Very, very good plain English guide to your rights, and they even cite each code there. And I've seen, when I was putting together the 50-state Public Records Guide a while back, I would say half the states had something like this out. And it's even better if the state itself issues a nice citizens type of guide to this. So don't forget to look for that. Let's see if we got any more questions here. Is the list request to bypass the manager and get the person in charge of these lists? Okay. Some states have a person that is in charge of the public records requests for that office. Other states don't have a designated public access person. We're just really trying to bypass the people that don't know what we're talking about. That's really what we're trying to do. We want to get to the person that handles these mortgage and tax foreclosure sales, and there's no way they don't know what happens with the money. So we just want to avoid a lot of frustration talking to low-level employees who honestly don't know what we're talking about and try to turn us away. Is it common for the agency to wait 2 to 3 days to respond to your email request? I suppose that happens occasionally. I don't know how often they check their email, or maybe if they're not required to give public records requests through email, they may just ignore it. But when you send enough out, it's going to be the very most efficient way to start getting some lists coming in. If they've ignored you, try them again.
Or put it in writing. You know, the law typically is going to say the agency has X number of days to respond. In my state, they have 5 days to respond to you, and they do that because they know there are significant penalties if they don't. And then they have 30 days to provide it to you unless they tell you it's going to take more than 30. And if it does, then they have to tell you the date by which you will get it. So they really are sort of, they're locked in there in terms of their responsibilities and how they have to respond. We take this sunshine law very seriously here, and we think it's a good thing that the government is transparent and that we can see what they're doing and how they're doing it. So it's great that we, as citizens, have these rights to these records.
That's right, and most of these counties or agencies really do take it seriously, and they don't want trouble when they don't comply. So,
right.
If it gets down to it, send a certified letter with the written request, and you have a record of when it was received. I think you can track that with the post office. And now once they get a certified letter, they know they're locked in. And if they're really not cooperating through email, that's one way to show them you're serious. One last question. Are you doing a blast throughout the state? We don't start off doing that. We definitely want to make sure we know what we're asking for and what the rules are and all that. And that's why I recommend experimenting with a smaller county by email and phone.
Far
or maybe
away.
a handful of them.
Right.
And, once you get your first list, and I'm going to talk about this in a couple minutes, you can even give a little sample of another list you've gotten from another county and say, please see the attached list I got from Stark County, and I believe your office keeps a list like this too, so that's what I want. So please don't do a blast, though, your first time out until you've had a little bit of results from contacting a few counties first. All right. What are we going to look for when we review the law? We've already talked a lot about this, so maybe we'll go through this a little quicker. Do you have to make a written request to put the law on your side? And in a surprising amount of states, you do. Any other kind of request besides written in the mail or dropped off does not compel the agency to do anything. So if you're having bad email results, good idea to start sending a few letters out, maybe just 4 or 5, and even send them certified. It costs a couple bucks, but that will show the agency that you're serious and you can track when they received it. Another thing to look for, how long does the agency have to respond? And Joe, I think you said they have 7 days in Washington?
5 days.
5 days.
Right.
I've seen 3, 7, 14. It's all reasonable amounts of time for them to respond. And usually if they deny you, they have to say why. And that will give you a great clue as to how to come back and modify your records request. Maybe you need to make it a little more specific. Maybe you need to, I don't know. Whatever they come back with, that's something that you can address, or you could even post to the forum and we could take a look at it. And see if they have a public records access officer. A lot of states appoint one for each agency, and if you address it directly to them, that'll cut your waiting time. It's good to look at the fees. I usually don't worry too much about that. Per copy fees, I've never seen more than $1, and sometimes they charge you for actual time that they use to generate your request. And there could be some other methods as well. Once in a while, they'll try to charge you something like $100 for a list, and if you look at the law and you say, well, this law, your public access law says that you're supposed to charge me for actual costs, so can you please give me a breakdown of the billing to arrive at that $100? And my sister shot that back to somebody, and they said, okay, well, we'll just give it to you then. and it came in by email that day. So, if you know what you're doing, if you know what you're entitled to, it helps. Are they required to provide the list to you electronically if it exists in that format? Many times they are. I'd say over half the time, if they have it electronically, they must provide it electronically. So see if they're required to do that, and once you get your feet wet, maybe you try to hold them to that requirement.
We had a case in my state where they didn't. The person asked for digital records, and the agency would not give them to them, and wanted them to pay. I think it was like $15,000 for it was thousands of pages of stuff. And they wanted to pay it. They wanted them to pay all these copy charges, and just the work in doing them, even though they had everything already scanned and in their systems. So the judge ruled that no, they had to just give them a CD of all the records and call that good, and they didn't have to pay anything for it. So it's interesting how, sometimes, things don't really make sense when, why $15,000 when I can just get a CD? Sometimes, it's a government thing and it just doesn't add up. But, we go through it and we do what we have to do to get it done.
Maybe someone has to take 15 minutes to learn how to export something to a CD, and they don't want to. So they say, we know how to print these out one at a time, and copies are $1.
This is how we've done it. Yeah, this is how we've done it forever. So
you just have to see what you're entitled to and see if you can get around that. And finally, regardless of the format that you wind up being able to get, do they have to mail that request to you or even email it to you, or could they even require that you have to show up to pick it up? And in Indiana, I have to show up to pick it up if they want to request that. Luckily, a lot of these agencies realize that, you know, it does nobody any good to make someone drive 100 miles to get something when it's just sitting there on the desk and they have a postpaid envelope in their hand. So if you've been friendly to them when you've talked to them, and you explain to them, you know, I have to drive 100 miles for this around, you know, each way. Do you think that's the best thing for, you know, gas prices right now, for me to burn 10 gallons of gas getting to you and back to get this when you could just put it right in that postpaid envelope that you have in your hand, and they'll laugh and they'll do it a lot of times. If you saw my blog post today, I went to an agency nearby me, which would have been no hassle to get the list, but she was nice enough to call me back and just say, hey, send me $9, I'll put it in the mail for you.
There you go.
So that's how you can do it. So looking back at this state guide again, a lot of times you can answer most of these questions just with what we have right here. And I highlighted the answers to most of these questions for New Jersey. They define a government record, and they talk about it being information stored electronically or data that's processed. So you know that electronic records are part of the government records you can request. And you can see that they can only charge you the actual cost of duplicating the record, or they have a, you know, in absence of that, they ask for 75 cents a page, and then the more you ask, it goes down in price. So very reasonable. It should be well worth paying that. And they have to give it to you in the medium, and of course that means electronic, paper, whatever, however you request it, as long as they keep it that way. So if you're looking at New Jersey, you'd find all that right here. This is something I touched on earlier. Sometimes public agencies have a form for their own use that you have to fill out, and it's no big deal. They're online a lot of times, or I think they would certainly send it to you by mail or email if you requested it. And sometimes those are required. So you know, if that's something they want, let them have it. Let's see. However, it appears in New Jersey that a request for government records must be in writing and hand-delivered, mailed, or transmitted electronically. So there you go. If you send an email, it would work. A lot of them say must have a written, mailed request. And they have 7 days in New Jersey, you can see right here, to respond to the request unless there's extraordinary circumstances. So you'll find similar answers to all the questions we just talked about in a lot of these states that are in the guide tonight. And if you don't see something there, look for a plain English guide like I showed you before, or just sit down and read the statute. It's not that long, and you can easily get to it. Let's see. Let's take a second for questions here. Someone said, yeah, I gave them the smackdown on that one. That's right. Okay. Where do you find out if they're required to give electronic records? I think we just covered that. Okay, so that's it for questions. Move on.
Has anybody requested public records from Alabama? Have you dealt with that one, that only residents of Alabama are entitled to make public records requests? Have you ever seen that in any other state?
No, I haven't, actually. I wonder if they would try to use that against you, because then all we would do is we'd hire someone on Craigslist that's a citizen of Alabama, and they'd make it, right? We're not going to let them put these roadblocks in front of us. We're going to get what we want.
For sure.
Okay, so here are a few suggestions. Mentioned it earlier, the more specific you can be when you make your request, the better. If all you have to go on right now is, please give me a list of your unclaimed funds, by all means, give it a try, see what you get. But if you have some idea of exactly what you're requesting, make it a little more specific, and that'll pin them down a little more. So just try your best. So in order to do that, if you review the state code that's in this 50-state guide, and you can find anything about the public access law that you could mention in there, or the specific funds you're seeking in the tax sale overages or mortgage overages section, by all means, copy and paste that in there. It'll show them that you know what you're doing a little bit more. And if you've already gotten a list from a smaller county or another county, take a front page from it and attach it. Say, I got this from Cherokee County, and this is how they do it. I'm quite sure you do it like that. Please give me your equivalent.
Right. And don't forget, in the resources, we have sample emails and sample letters for making requests for public records. So.
Sure. And don't forget, if they have a request form that you need to provide, don't let that get in your way. That's no problem at all. Just get your hands on it, fill it out, and put in the most specific requests that you can. So I have 3 example requests set up here. The first one is the one that you're getting with your resource section. Ask them for a listing of their unclaimed funds from mortgage or tax sale foreclosures. And you'd be surprised if you make your list a little or your request a little more vague. Sometimes you can even get listings of funds besides tax sale and mortgage overages that the county's holding. So you never know what goodies that you'll get. And with that list I showed you earlier from my county clerk, I was very surprised when I first got it. All the other funds that were on there I would have never thought of before. So you might have to do a little more back and forth with the agency, but you're going to learn a lot the first couple times you do it. You're gonna drill down to what you want. You're gonna get it, and then you'll be an expert for the other 38 or 99 counties in the state. So this is email that we've provided. It's hard to make it more specific than this so that it will work everywhere. But just let them know that under the public records statute, you're requesting a list of any unclaimed funds, and you'd like them digitally, and here's your email address. And if it's not available in list form, just give us the individual records. That will do. If you have any questions, call or email. So they will do that, and you'll learn a lot from that. Here's one that's a little more specific, and this is what I put in my blog post today. If you didn't see that, just go to the home page and check it out. It's pretty cool. I happen to already know the name of the specific record that I was looking for when I made the request, and it was somewhat of a technical name that I had learned along the way. So once I asked for that and I directed it to the public records officer, there was just really no room for any more questions than that. This particular office did have an official form that they wanted filled out before they would do a records request, and it was easy enough to do. And I even gave them a little sample of their very own record that they gave me before, which everyone in the office told me they didn't have. So
perfect.
They were pretty much, they really had nowhere to go there. And let's see, this was it.
Well, why would you think they wouldn't want to help you? They just don't want to do the work, or?
I don't know if they wouldn't want to help me, but it would definitely show them that I have a record from their office in the past, and that if the person that opens my envelope doesn't know what I'm talking about or doesn't know what I'm asking, they'll pass it on to the head person in the office. And you know, I'll be honest, there's a little bit of resentment sometimes with some of these employees that you might run into, and just don't let it get to you. In a lot of cases, you'll make more on one claim than they make all year going to that office and slaving every day.
Yep.
So you can't expect them to love what you're doing that much, but you're providing so much more value than they are, and that's why you get paid so much more.
There you go.
Right? So
very true.
Since I knew what I was asking for, I named it right here, the Register of Trust Funds and Fees. And I noticed on what they actually gave me, it was called a cash book showing open items. I would have never known that, but that was at the top of the request I had gotten before. So I threw that in there in case that was their terminology for it. And they wanted this filled out very simple, reasonable. My name, address, my business address, where I live, and restate what I want. And here's where I gave them a little sample. So got a call right back, and that's the one where the clerk told me, oh, you know, I have your request ready. Would you like to pick it up and pay me $9, or would you like to send me $9 in the mail? And I don't know, depending on how lazy I feel tomorrow, I might send her $9 in the mail.
That'd do it.
Okay, so now I want to show you one more. Oops, I missed one here. I want to show you one more that was pretty interesting. I think I'm missing a slide here. My sister is working the business too, and she's found that extremely specific emails also work. And don't let this scare you, but if you can dump everything into an email that you send, that you can. I hope you can read this. It's probably very small. But she's asking for a request of the excess funds list. And in case of any confusion, the excess funds list is, and she tells them in plain English what it is, tells them what she wants, owner's name, property address, owner's mailing address, et cetera, and even ask them to forward this to the right office if this has been misdirected. So I thought that was very clever.
Very good,
and
yeah.
That has paid off as well, I've heard. If there's anything I can do to aid or expedite the process, please let me know. I'm eager to do whatever I can. So it gives it a nice tone. And I love this. P.S. Although I know most everyone in your office is likely familiar with the codes, just in case, here's 3 pages of them that show exactly what we want.
That's great.
So I got a kick out of that, and I guess she's going at an 80 or 90% success rate by email where she's working right now. So, you know, the more you can give them, the better, and they know you're serious.
Yeah,
Real quick, things not to do. You can be firm with your request. You can have confidence. You can tell them that you know that they have this record, and if the employee is not familiar with it, please kick you up the ladder a little bit. But never be rude, and never take your anger out on the employees through letters and emails. As I've said, when people deny you, oftentimes it's out of ignorance. It's not out of malice. So don't fire off angry letters or emails. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to ostracize you from the whole community. I think Joe even told a story on the video today about, or somewhere that I saw, about someone that threw a fit in the office, and there was a county treasurer's meeting somewhere, and the whole state knew about it, right?
Yeah, they're connected, so you don't want to be screaming, "I'll be your worst nightmare," as the sheriff drags you out of the treasurer's office. I can promise that.
Absolutely. So, might get a little frustrating.
It's pretty legendary around here, though. So he's got that going for him.
So would you want to be him requesting anything anywhere? I wouldn't want to be.
No.
Are you that guy?
Yeah. And if anybody wants to see a copy of an angry letter or email, let me know, because I've got a few I could show them. Sadly.
Oh, you've learned that the hard way. Huh?
I may have sent 1 or 2 of those off in my time.
Okay, so, as Joe said earlier, if you really think about this, the harder it is to get a list and the more you have to work at it, think of how many people probably took the time to do it. Many times, none. So, very good. Okay, so we have 10 minutes left, and I want to see if we have any voice questions. Please raise your hand. I have a little summary screen here. I'm just going to blast through it because I want to keep the last 12 minutes we have here open for voice questions. Let's see. Yeah, let's see if anyone has a voice question. I think there's a couple text questions up there. Okay, we've got several here. Let's go with Orlando first. Orlando, you on?
No, it's Sammy.
Orlando? Okay,
Hi.
we got somebody must have had to take a break for a minute. How about John Lee? John, how you doing tonight?
Good. Rick, you there?
I'm here.
Hey, John.
Hi, g'day, Joe. We're just having a hell of a lot of trouble getting our list. Most of the counties that we've emailed have come back and said we don't hold that list here, and it's sent on to the county, to the state level. But that would be the list that we're not after, wouldn't it, at the state level?
Usually in almost every state, that would be funds that have sat there for 2, 3, 5, 7 years, like we talked about in the first webinar. Eventually they do send them to the state, but they certainly keep them at the office, at their office for a significant period of time in almost every case. There could be exceptions, but for the most part, they should certainly keep mortgage overages and tax sale overages at in their account for some significant period of time, at least a year.
Yeah, most of these replies have come back and said, we do not keep any unclaimed funds here. And I've sent a couple to the county clerk, and they said, no, this is the wrong office. So then I've sent to the treasurer, and some of those have come back and said, no, we don't keep any unclaimed funds here. I have got a couple of lists of a couple of them, but they're just for mainly uncashed checks, I think they said, and amounts up to mainly around the $100 mark, but up to $1,000.
Okay.
Right. And so now I'm maybe thinking that I have to send another email to the same county, but to the tax collector.
I think that may be, even though we said the treasurer's the place to start if you have really no idea who holds these funds, it could be very well right that they don't hold any, except for uncashed checks, and that was quite generous of them to give you that list, and that could be a good list in some counties, I don't know. But have you looked into the law in that state, and does it lead you to believe that the treasurer does hold the funds, or do you maybe need to find the right agency for those?
Yeah, so is it likely that they'd be sort of telling you a lie, that maybe they do have the funds but they're saying they don't, or we're just not talking to the right person?
I think you're probably just not speaking the same language, having nothing to do with your accent, which is wonderful, by the way. But I think it's just getting on the same page with them, and you may not be with the right people, or who knows at this point. But what I'd like you to do is send me an email that and just show me what you're sending and what you're getting back, and I believe I can quickly get to the bottom of it, because something is just a little bit off here. I'm not quite sure what yet, but there is something a little bit off.
Oh, that'd be great, Joe.
Yeah.
And if you say that you're very keen to get their list, then they'll know exactly where you're from. That's a new. Now that we have all the New Zealand and Australia people here, that's a well-used word I haven't seen before.
Yeah. I did get one funny one. I sent one to the clerk, and she forwarded that email on to the treasurer, and it said, "Oh, here's another one. There must have been a get-rich-quick scheme on somewhere."
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting 3 or 4 of these a day.
Yeah.
But I'll do that, Joe. I'll put this in an email to you. Will I do that through the support forum?
That could either way works just fine.
That'd be great.
Better on
Thanks
the main
very
forum if you can just leave out your specifics, and if you have to give a specific, then yes, support forum's great.
Oh, no. We're talking the help. I thought we were talking the help desk here. Don't post it up on the forum. You don't want to do that, right?
Not if you have any kind of specific state and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Very good, John. We'll get to the bottom of it, for sure.
Okay. Let's see. Let me give Orlando one more chance here. Orlando, you on the line now?
Rick?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Emily. I'm Orlando's wife.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Okay, I have a question. I went to the court today, and I went to the tax lien office to find out about the list. The lady told me that they only have a few people in the list, that the place that I'm at, that they don't have little money, that it was not worth to keep the list, and they wanted a name. And she wouldn't give me no more information, and then after that she says, are you looking for, what's the name? The money that we're looking for?
Well, I think we lost them there. All I can say is if it's a tax lien state, I only know of a couple that have surplus funds, if that's where you were going with that. So a lot of tax lien states don't have the funds. And if you go in person and they want to tell you, you have to give them a specific, claim, and then they'll look it up instead of just giving you all the claims, it sounds like it's probably time to make a written request. What do you think, Joe?
You go in person to learn what it is that you need to do. But you don't go in person to get the list because, they're not going to stop in the middle of their workday and, service you and put a list together for you. That's why they have a certain period of time to respond. So I would go to learn what's going on, and, some agencies have actually, sat down with me for, 15, 20 minutes and described the whole process. And now I can come away from that, and I can send an email or a letter and get exactly what I need because this guy told me and he's in charge, that kind of thing. So, showing up, asking for a list at the counter is probably not going to happen. I don't know that that's what she was trying, but it's kind of what it sounded like to me.
Okay. I have a text question from Brett, which is, what business structure is required for non-U.S. residents? And unfortunately, that is definitely outside the scope of this course, but I'm sure there are some resources out there. Let's see, and I think a couple people asked that. All right, I have one more question, one more hand raised from Chris. Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, good, guys. Hey,
Hi, Chris.
same situation as John, asking county for unclaimed funds, coming back with negative comments saying we don't hold these. And the very same web page of the county, I found their excess proceeds available, and they had a list for the unclaimed funds. So it's just terminology, I guess. But interesting, in that list, it wasn't easy to find on the website. And I know you say stay away from them, but over half of them are substantial amounts, some of them reaching over $100,000. And I'm thinking, geez, is it worthwhile wasting my time on this list, or should I keep going for something that I have to fight for?
Okay, you would work the list. If they're up there, that means they're still available. So you would,
Since April, yeah.
Yeah, you would work that, but you'd have to recognize that everybody has seen this list. Look at the work we're going through to get our own lists because they're not on the web, and look at how easy it is to to Google it and find it. So out of the 2 people that have the list that had to go through the gauntlet to get it, there's going to be 100 people working that list that was posted on the internet. So I'm not saying not to do the one on the internet. There may be something there, but you'd have to be really, really good at it or get lucky, I suppose. I'd much rather work the list that they just almost never give out, but you were persistent and tenacious, and they gave it out just to make you go away. That's the list I want to be working.
I will still be targeting those. But if one county in the state has an on-site list, does that mean all the counties do?
Oh no, lots of counties do, but it's nothing consistent. So, I always talk about Maricopa County. I've mentioned that several times. It's up there. Go take a look. Phoenix, Arizona, Maricopa County. And I'm sure everybody and their brother works that one because there are big cases up there, and, there they are. So it's very tempting to work, but it's just, it doesn't, the equity for us isn't really there, I don't think.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. And I got a comment just now. I got my first list today by email. I personalized the message quoting the public record law in that state, and it worked great. So
Nice.
I've agreed. I mean, I've found the same thing. So especially if you can quote a little bit of the law of where these overages are coming from, and you don't necessarily have to, but if you can, that it'll get to the right person and it'll get paid out. So, Joe, I think we're just about out of time. It's 7:59. And thank you for joining me tonight, and I think we'll have Joe on most of the rest of these calls to add a lot of good input in. So, any closing comments tonight?
Well, just I'd like to make sure everybody recognizes that this is just the way it works here. It's not like you're doing something wrong, or you're not using the right words or whatever. It's just the way it works. They make it difficult. You're a bit of a bother, and they'd much rather see you go away. I'm talking about the government agencies. So just don't let that bother you. Don't give up. Just go through the process. And again, once you've figured it out with one county in that state, you've pretty much figured it out with every other county. So if you can get the one done, it just opens up the world to you. Very simple from there. So just don't give up. Don't get discouraged. We all go through it. I go through it. Even today, there are counties that I struggle to get lists from.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So it's 8 o'clock, everyone, or 8 o'clock my time. So good night, and we will see you. Or talk to you at least this Saturday on the teleconference, and I will get those details out right away tonight with your call-in number, time, code, all that kind of stuff. It's at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so please try to be around if you can. And I'll actually be in Boston at one of our former students' places. I'm going to go out there and hang out and talk with him this weekend, enjoy the end of the summer. So I'll be calling you from Boston Jay's house, and he's already gotten 5 claims in since our training in June. So excited to catch up with him.
And will Jay be in on the call?
I think he needs to be.
Perfect.
I think he needs to be.
Fabulous. Okay. Look forward to that.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Good night. And we'll see you all on the web for sure. Adios.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.